Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here. We're going to take a look at the much-awaited Kingdom line of Transformer toys this month, especially since quite a few of them were on the retail shelves right after Christmas. Unfortunately, though, many of them have gotten pretty scarce lately, so I think it's time we start looking at some of them. And here we have Optimus Prime, the Core Class version of the toy. Because, of course, Optimus here will get two releases in the Kingdom line. This one here, the Core Class, and there will also be the Leader Class version, which is essentially the Earthrise version of Optimus Prime, just repackaged in Kingdom packaging. Now that version I am not going to review this time around, because I have no incentive to spend another $50 on a toy I already have. Now, of course, if somebody donates a Kingdom Optimus Prime of the Leader Class to this channel, then yes, we will review it, since I certainly don't want to turn down any donations. Especially, as you can see here right next to my loose one, because this one I bought right after Christmas, and then we got this one donated. This was sent to me by Zanette for Valentine's Day, so I do thank you, pretty lady, for sending this one. Even though I unfortunately already had him, the thought is still very, very much appreciated. Alright, let's get him out of the way. And we'll take a look here at this Core Class Optimus. Now, some of you may be wondering, how does he compare, in size especially, to, say, the Earthrise one, or the similar Kingdom toy? Well, here's the Earthrise version of Optimus, so you can get an idea of the scale. And of course, for added bonus, we'll stand in next to it the Siege version, for those of you who may have missed out on the Earthrise Prime. And you can see the comparable size difference between them. This Core Class figure is about half the size of these modern Optimus toys. And of course, for added fun, since this one is inspired by the Generation 1 toy, here he is right next to the Generation 1 toy. And again, we're looking at about half the size. But on the positive side for this for Optimus being at this small means that he is at the lower price point. So if you are a parent that has a child that is into the Transformers, you can actually get an Optimus Prime for them, and it's not going to feel like it's going to break the bank, as the Core Class figures retail for roughly between $8 and $10. So it's reasonably affordable, or you can just get the kid to raise the money on their allowance or whatever. But it now means that Optimus is more available, for purchase anyway, for a grander audience. Especially when you consider the fact that the Siege version, which was a Voyager class toy, retailed for about $30, and the Earthrise and Kingdom ones, the larger toy, is a Leader Class, and he retails for about $50. So, yeah, it's a bit expensive for many of the others who want an Optimus in their collection to be able to afford him. Optimus here only comes with one accessory, and that is, of course, his infamous ionic blaster. It's done up as a very simplified version of his gun, But of course, part of it takes some inspiration from its Generation 1 counterpart, in the fact that it uses the grip is a big long post. That's about all that it takes from its G1 counterpart, aside from the similarly shaped design. And of course, let's take a look at Optimus and his articulation, and for a figure of his scale, he does have a fair amount. The head does turn from left to right. It unfortunately is mounted on a special piece for its transforming, so you can make him look up, but you're going to end up bringing out part of it as well. His arms can be raised out about so far, and his arms do rotate at the shoulders all the way around. Optimus does have an elbow joint, so you can bend his arm at the elbow 90 degrees. And when it is a little bit on the looser side, there is a swivel. There is a basic swivel at the bicep. So it does allow for the G.I. Joe battle grip. It just takes a little effort due to the ball joint being a little bit snug. Optimus cannot twist at his hips due to the fact that he does not have a hip joint. His legs can be spread apart into a full splits. You can raise his leg up at the hip just above 90 degrees. And he can bend his leg at the knee, again, just a little bit above 90 degrees. So he does have significant posability in this toy form. You just gotta watch how you stabilize him, because his legs are a little wonky on keeping him upright. Okay, now to transform Optimus, and due to his small size, he will be a very simple transformation. Start by taking his head, and we are going to push it and the silver plate that it's on downwards into the body. And then we're going to raise his arms a little bit, and you will fold the fists inside. Just exactly like that. And we turn him around to the back, and we're going to raise up this central red plate and fold it up and connect it to where the head used to be. Then we're going to raise his arms up a bit so that we can twist the upper torso around like so. Then you're going to come down here to the legs. The legs are going to go together, since they have some posts and holes there. And then you will swing the entire hip assembly backward, just like that. You'll take this front wheel assembly, and you're going to rotate it all the way around to bring the wheels to the ground. And the sides should line up with Prime's body, just like that. Then we're going to straighten his arms out and bend them at the elbow. Then you will fold the shoulders onto the back and then rotate the arms at the bicep inside. This part will be a bit snug, but it does not require a lot of effort. A little patience. Of course, as the more he's played with, this will get easier. Then, of course, once you've done that, everything should line up where there will be holes underneath the arms. You can probably not see them there on the camera, but these posts here on the upper portion of his legs should line up to connect and firmly secure the toy. And then there you have it. Prime is now in his most famous alternate mode, that being a cab-over-engine semi-truck. An early 1980s Freightliner model for the more modern versions, but that's what it's intended to look like. He's on a bunch of little Wii wheels, so Optimus rolls pretty good. And of course, you do have a couple of options for the gun. Since this version will not have a trailer, the hole in between his legs back here can be used to mount the gun so that he can discourage tailgaters. But there is another option. Right here on the sides, on this gray portion of the truck, there's a little tiny hole. It's present on both sides. You would basically take this post right here at the front of the gun, and you can mount it into that hole on either side. It looks kind of silly like that, but it at least does give you some different options to display it. And of course gives your children different options as to how to play with it. Now of course, let's have it compared side by side with a few of the other trucks. This is the Generation 1 version. As you can see, it does a fairly good job of capturing the aesthetic appeal and design of the original. Of course, it's not an accurate replica of it. It's not intended to be. Mainly because Hasbro does not want to pay Freightliner any royalties for the likeness of this truck. But it does have a lot of the core elements that did make up Optimus Prime. You can look at it and you can definitely tell it is Optimus Prime. Get this one out of the way, and mainly for size comparison, there's the Siege version. Since the Siege one was intended to be a Cybertronian truck, but part of it you can see is in the legs. Let's get the shield out of the way. It's got a similar pattern for the legs that it carries over from the Siege. The gray slats carries that over. So that was seen in it. But of course, it is also present here on the Earthrise version, which is probably the version it's trying most to emulate, just in a very smaller scale. And again, just by looking at it, it's not a perfect replica, but hey, it kind of does its own thing. And of course, we did have similar options with the gun. On this one, you could store it back there on the trailer post if you so chose, but you did also have the option that you could mount it on the open holes on the side. And that way it kind of resembles each other. But now we get down to my thoughts on this. What do I think of this toy of Optimus? Believe it or not, I actually like this version of Optimus Prime. I know a fair amount of people will not like it due to the fact that it's basically an overglorified Micromaster of Optimus Prime. And I get that. And I understand that some will not like it because of that. And that's perfectly fine. But, like I stated earlier, the lower price point for this toy means now that more of the fans of the Transformers can get an Optimus Prime for their collection or for their child to have. As in the next wave of the core class figures, we are supposedly going to get Megatron and Starscream, both in kinda G1 aesthetics. I say kinda since Megatron's still going to be a tank. He's not going to be a gun like he was in the Generation 1 era, but more of the modern cartoons have depicted him as a tank. So at least we've got that going for it. And it'll mean you can have Megatron and Optimus fight. Or you can have Optimus fight Starscream. Or Megatron fight Starscream. However you want it to be. It means that more fans can get access to some of the popular characters that are normally out of the range for many of us. As stated earlier, many of these guys are in the $30 to $50 price point. And that does tend to get a bit on the expensive side. Especially if you're trying to pay for other things, like food, rent, car, student loans. Thankfully I don't have those, but you get the idea. It gets hard to afford to buy the nicer ones, or the ones of the popular characters, when they cost so much. This is a nice alternative. The articulation for it is pretty good, so you do get a lot of play out of this toy. The only real issue I may have is probably with the way you can mount the gun like that on the side. It just looks a little weird like that, but that's only a real minor gripe for an otherwise pretty good figure. And that concludes my review of the core class version of Optimus Prime in the Kingdom line. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you liked the video, please leave me a thumbs up on YouTube. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button and join our ranks. Make sure you ring that bell, because this month we're going to be posting videos kind of helter-skelter, so make sure you ring that bell so you're notified when new ones go up. I also ask that you share this video with your friends and fellow collectors. That's what helps this channel grow. And also share your thoughts of Optimus Prime in the comments down below. This is Sparkster1701 saying I'll catch you all later.